Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Winner's Circle. I'm Ross Benjamin, along with Chip Chirimbus, and it's Tuesday, November 24th. You're viewing right now on the OSGA YouTube channel, folks. If you have not subscribed already, please take a second to do so. It costs you absolutely nothing, and it helps keeps these videos alive. And if you like our video, like you have been doing right along, and we appreciate it, give us a like at the end of our show here. So, Chipper, how are you, buddy? We got a big week ahead with Thanksgiving football and a lot of action in college football on Friday, which we're going to talk about today.
Right.
And watched last night's game, much to our dismay, as we both had the under, and it went over the total. It finished 27-24. I had 48.5. I don't know what you had, but in any event, it wasn't good enough. But we both had a good week in the NFL. I went 3-1 on Sunday. I lost yesterday. Chipper was 4-0 on Sunday. And so 4-1 ain't bad, buddy. So anyway, what's your initial thoughts? I know your buddy Robinson Cano was in the news recently.
Well, we always badmouth him when he was in New York all the while because he never ran out a ground ball and always considered him a bum. And what a shame that he's playing for the Yankees. So, he got jettisoned out to Seattle and got his $250 million, comes back to New York, and his attitude toward the game hasn't changed at all, even though he's playing with the Mets. He got suspended for the second time, actually the third time, because it's a full year suspension for using steroids. And the Mets are stuck with him for 2 years after that with his contract, though he won't get paid his $20 million this year.
Nor should he.
Not a big Robinson Cano fan, and it was something that us New Yorkers among each other were just like, chiding each other and the Yankees about.
Yeah, too bad. The kid had a ton of potential when he came up. He had stardom written all over. He has had a productive career.
If you look at his stats and you compare them to Joe Morgan, there's no comparison. Yeah. I mean, he's just so outstanding, and yet I would take Joe Morgan 100 times over.
Oh, you're talking about a Hall of Famer compared to a guy who's, on his third suspension for steroids.
Right.
How smart is he? I mean, come on. I mean, I hate to throw stones at anybody, but once, twice, now 3 times, it just shows. I don't know what he thinks he's not going to trick the system. So I don't know. Anyway, let's move.
Before we go on, I'm just wondering why it's the union. We know why. I mean, I was wondering why the team that has this guy signed under contract doesn't get a chance to just void his entire contract, as opposed to not paying him for the year. They're still on the hook, the Mets, for 2 years after that at over $20 million a year. All right, let's get to the college basketball football. That's more interesting.
College basketball, too, starting tomorrow, folks, by the way.
Right.
And, you can get our college basketball picks by going to either of our websites. That's chipwins.com or rbwins.com. Also, we both post at atsstats.com, which is my buddy Ron Raymond's site. So plenty of options for you to obtain our best picks in college basketball, college football, and the NFL. Let's talk some college football, Chipper. Thanksgiving Day, Colorado State at Air Force, a Mountain West battle. Right now, Air Force, they opened as I believe, a 7.5-point favorite in this game. Let me double check that line. They opened as a 7-point favorite. I mean, I'll see them anywhere from 5 to 6, mostly in the 5.5 range. Air Force, a really tough team to gauge for me thus far. Chipper, any thoughts on this game?
Well, let me just start off by saying that my turkey shoot weekend is going to start in colleges on Saturday. We're definitely going to have a full load on the pros on Thursday. And these games are not games, I think, like you mentioned a number of times. If they were on a Saturday, we wouldn't be interested in playing them. And that's how I feel about both these games. I think Colorado State might get the edge here in my mind, being at, I would imagine the public and everyone's going to come heavy on Air Force here, and there's going to be a lot of family around at the academy. And, I think that's actually more of a distraction when you're playing at home in this type of situation, the holidays. And it isn't a game I think that I would step out on, Ross, but those are my thoughts about it. Colorado State, they came out, they won for me somewhere along the lines on a Thursday or Friday night.
Against Wyoming. They upset Wyoming.
Yeah, they won that one for us. But otherwise, I haven't been involved in any of their action.
Yeah. Air Force, like I said, tough team to gauge right now, 2-2 on the year. However, they've allowed 17 points or less in 3 games this season. Their
Okay.
defense going into the year was supposed to be their weakness, and it was bombarded by people or players opting out on that side of the ball because of COVID-19. Yet they've outperformed their expectations thus far, coming off a 28-0 shutout over New Mexico last week.
Right.
Here's the thing. One thing I will give Colorado State an advantage on. They're going to be playing with 2 weeks rest, and Colorado or Air Force is only going to be playing on 6 days rest. So, along with what Chipper just alluded to, the distractions, and as we know, Air Force has traditionally been one of the most potent offensive running attacks in football with their triple option. And one thing that Colorado State does do good defensively is they're very good against the run, Chipper. They're only allowing 106 yards per game and 2.5 yards per rushing attempt. The other game anything else on that game, Chipper,
No,
before
I
I
was
move
just
on?
saying that's going to be strength against strength, and
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. And it might be interesting if that's an early game too. I believe it. I think it
Yeah,
starts 2 Eastern. It's going to
2
be a
Eastern.
daytime
That's
game.
correct.
So
Yep. Yep. 2 Eastern. And it looks to me like by the looks of things, we're seeing a little bit of reverse line movement here, Chipper, because 60% of the tickets and 71% of the money has gone to Air Force, yet that line has come down from an opener of 7 down to as low as 5. So something to keep an eye on if you're into that kind of stuff. And the other game is, boy, oh boy, a stinker. New Mexico at Utah State. Both teams 0-4. Utah State's an absolute mess right now. Not a game I'm willing to
yeah,
partake in. Right now, well, New Mexico opened as a 4.5 point favorite. They're now up to 6.5 on the road. Hard to imagine a road team with an 0-4 record as a road favorite. Yet tells you how bad Utah State is, Chip.
yeah. Not only that, I mean, this is a team that was shut out last time out. You just mentioned it about Air Force shutting them out completely. We know Utah State is really bad, but some of these teams somewhere along the line come up and come up with a victory. I would imagine this might be the Aggies' best shot. They're
Yeah.
playing an 0-4 team, and they're at home, and they may try and put it together. And like we say, every dog has its day, and there's a time for everyone in the season except for the Jets. And we'll, we'll just I'm under. My instinct would see to take the points here. I'm a Lobo fan from the baseball days.
Look, there's 3 other NFL games on Thursday. You might want to look for better value than this game here, which should be an absolute stinker and won't garner a lot of public attention. So let's get on to the Friday card, which we have some attractive matchups, Chip. Couple of games
Yeah,
pitting top 25 teams against each other, starting with I know a game that you have high interest in, number 2 Notre Dame at number 25 North Carolina. And right now, as we speak, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish are anywhere from a 4.5 to 5 point favorite in this
yeah.
game. And a lot of action coming in on Notre Dame, Chipper. Right now, the source that I use for that kind of material, we have 68% of the tickets and 79% of the money has come in on Notre Dame so far.
Well, I can see why. I mean, we've had great fortune with the North Carolina side, both on and against this year. I think I'm about 5 or 6-0 with them now, and garnered a lot of respect for this Notre Dame team, and we've done very, very well with them as well. On and against BC and taking Georgia Tech, and we've been very fortunate. Don't you think my first instinct, Ross, when I saw this, was that this line was a little shallow, and I think they're trying to. The odds maker, like we said, is looking for a little action on a Notre Dame, and they're getting it. I'm surprised that the line wasn't 6.5, and probably expected to move to 7. And now we're saying this line opened around 4, 3.5, 4, and it's at 4.5, 5.
Yeah. What heavy action on Notre Dame.
Carolina has shown that they're formidable and they can play. And I think the odds maker is giving them an awful lot of respect here, because this Notre Dame team I think they're better than the teams in the past. Those imposters that got beat 30-0 in the playoff games, and those teams that went up against Ohio State and Alabama and just couldn't compete. I think this Notre Dame team is a little bit different, a little bit better, maybe a little next tier level, but I'm surprised that this line is as low as it is.
Well, I'm not so shocked myself, to be quite honest with you. This was a North Carolina team that was ranked in the top 10 at the beginning of the year. They had some deficiencies. There's no two ways about it on the defensive side of the ball. All you have to do, Chipper, is look at their last 3 games, giving up over 40 a game and close to 480 yards per contest. But this is also a team 4-0, a perfect 4-0 on their home field, and they covered 3 of those 4 and winning by an average of 17.2 points per game. So, yeah, this is a better than advertised North Carolina team that hasn't got a lot of attention because they sort of fell out of favor early on, especially after that terrible loss at Florida State, a game in which you had
Yeah.
in that contest. So, any final thoughts before we move on?
No, I'm interested in looking. I wish it was on a Saturday, but this is a great treat on a Friday, and this will probably be one of the games that are going to kick off our turkey shoot for the weekend. I think it's a great matchup. I'm looking forward to it, but there's some other great ones out there as well this weekend.
Yep, and if you're a totals player, keep an eye on this. Might be a high-scoring game. You look at North Carolina's offensively; they're dynamic. They average 43.1 points per game. The Irish are at 37.6 points per game. The difference is the Irish defense is really, really tough. A little over 300 yards they allow per game. But North Carolina has gone over the total in 4 straight games. And right now we're looking at a total of 67. A lot of action on the over in that game too, which would make me steer clear, Chipper, in that regard. So I like to play some totals, but I don't think this is going to be one of the games I partake in that regard. The other nationally ranked teams against each other is number 15, Iowa State. Really impressive last week in a 45-0 win over Kansas State, eliminating Kansas State from any conference title contention. And they're going to be taking on number 20 Texas in the lower seeded or lower ranked team, the Texas Longhorns, right now a 1.5 point home favorite here against a red hot Iowa State team, Chipper, who is, if they win out, they're in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, well, the line looks right. It's, to me, they could have made Texas a 2-point favorite or even Iowa State, but if Texas hasn't passed the eye test as well as the Cyclones have. We've seen Iowa State be very impressive for us in a number of times. They posted a couple of big wins, and Texas, I think they beat Oklahoma State at home, and that was a big win for them. But I'm really wondering what's in store for them here. I'm giving Iowa State the edge coming into it, just without having done really a whole bunch of homework on this one. It's still early in the week, Ross. It's only a Tuesday.
Sure.
And this matchup is one that I'm going to look deeper into without a doubt.
Yeah. Actually, Iowa State lost at Oklahoma State 24-21, while Texas won at Oklahoma State, a common opponent. That game was in overtime. They won that game 41-34. But take note that that Oklahoma State team no longer real healthy. They lost their quarterback, Sanders. They also, Chuba Hubbard hasn't been playing fully healthy over the last couple of weeks. So a much different Oklahoma State team now than what faced these two teams earlier in the season, Chip. Anything else you want to add to this game?
No, like I said, I'm interested in seeing how the numbers pan out before the weekend's out. There's a lot of things we like to check, internally as far as other services and other professionals, and see exactly where the flow is going, along with the public as well. And plus the fact there's so many different factors with the virus hitting these teams day in and day out. This one I'm going to wait on until the weekend.
Nebraska in Iowa on Friday, 1:00 kickoff. Again, that Iowa State-Texas game, folks, is Friday as well, noon kickoff from Austin, Texas. Nebraska and Iowa, and in Iowa City, 1:00 kickoff, as I alluded to. Iowa opened as a 14-point favorite. They're now 13.5, Chip, coming off an impressive win. And Nebraska, just when you thought they were going to turn it around, they get blown out at home against Illinois. Illinois, Chipper.
Yeah. Of all teams, right? Illini, we know, are really, really weak. And Nebraska, won a game, but who did they
Yeah.
beat? They beat Penn State 2 weeks ago, who's still now, they're 0-5 now. That Penn State, I had a 134-year trend working on them this past week. 134-0 I was in this trend. They've never started 0-5, but they're 0-5 now. But Iowa, I'm sure it's got to be really cocky going to play a team that beat Penn State, who they just trounced. And I can't help but think that they may be a little overconfident here. That number, I think, did the number open 14, Ross, and then was there a notch that brought it down to 13?
Yeah, it opened at 14. It's now 13 and a half.
Yeah. So my first instinct was that I would think that the sharp players and some of the people that are on the inside grabbed Nebraska with the 14 right off the bat.
That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like with the money. Yeah. That's what it looks like with the money right now.
Yeah, that they might have a little letdown, but I expect Iowa to the action to come with them before the game's over. Laying 13.5. It all depends on how much incentive they have, and Nebraska, I think, is going to be fighting and clawing all the way. They're desperate, and at least for a good showing after that. What a humiliating loss to Illinois.
They allowed 490 yards in that game, and you mentioned their win against Penn State the week before, 30-23. Despite the fact, keep this in mind, in their only win, they were outgained by Penn State in that contest, 501 to 298. So very lucky to walk away with that only win. They look like they've had a lot of struggles offensively, Nebraska thus far, putting up some yards, but not really putting up a lot of points. 30 was high output against Penn State and 23 or less in the other three games, Chipper. And this Iowa defense has been really good this season. Especially over their last three games, they've been really good. So, again, is Iowa going to be up for a letdown? Okay. I don't know. They won at Penn State 41-21. They're not going to be looking ahead to their game at Illinois, that's for sure. And Nebraska, they can't afford to look ahead to anybody right now with a 1-3 record. Are they going to be up to the task here on the road at Iowa? It's yet to be seen. So something we'll keep an eye on in the next couple of days is especially the line movement in that game, Chip. How about this game? Oregon State. A lot more interesting than people might think, because Oregon State, they appear to me to be a much better team than they've been in recent years. And Oregon right now is sailing along. I think they're ranked number 11 in the country, if I'm not mistaken, actually number 9. And they're a 13.5-point road favorite in this contest, Chipper. It's a series that's been dominated by the Ducks, winning 12 of the last 13. Can Oregon State hang in this game, or will Oregon be that won't be a letdown because it's a rivalry game?
Right. They have dominated this series, and they've dominated this series at Oregon State as well. And point spread wise and straight up, and I think the number was like 13-5-1 on the road against this team over the last 2 decades. But my first instinct when I saw this was that I gravitated toward Oregon State because it's a rivalry game, and they showed. I thought they had seen that they were able to move the ball, and then today, Ross, I checked and saw that their offensive stats weren't as impressive as I had originally thought. Whereas, of course, Oregon is one of the top teams in the country offensively, scoring wise. I think they're averaging like 38 points a game, and my first thoughts on this game was that they would go over the total. And I think these two have played over quite a bit against each other, as Oregon just seems to put up points at will. They are a great offensive machine, and it doesn't seem to matter who's coaching them or who's quarterbacking them, and they're still putting up points like crazy.
Yeah, well, the last 2 meetings have both gone under, okay, but let's keep in mind those totals were 71 and 64.5. As a matter of fact, the one game Oregon won 55-15 in 2018, Chipper, barely stayed under the total of 71. So,
sorry, did the open? I think I saw the opener here opened at 61 and jumped to 64 almost immediately.
Yes, I got 61.5 to 64. Yeah, and a
Yeah,
lot.
there you go. Well, that was one of the reasons I thought my instinct was that the game would probably go over the total. Is
Yeah,
that
that's
move is an extraordinary move, big move.
yes, it is. Right off the bat, especially. Um,
Yeah.
but Oregon State actually, they've been okay in 2 or 3 games offensively. I mean, they had 461 yards in their loss to Washington State last week in the win over Cal. They had 360 yards, and they played Washington really tough on the road as a 13-point dog. They only lost 27-21. So my point being, Chipper, is they appear to be a lot more competitive team than they've been in recent years. And we'll see. I mean, it's not like Oregon's going to be looking past this game because, like I said, a rivalry game. And they got Cal up next to Cal is 0-2. So speaking of Cal, the Bay Area battle, Stanford and California, big rivalry game, 4:30 p.m. on Friday, Chipper. And right now, the Cal Bears are a 1.5-point favorite in this contest. They open at 3. 2 teams off the disappointing starts, 0-2 apiece. Your thoughts?
The game, right? Isn't it?
Yes,
That's
yes, yes,
and it's always been big. It's always been big on my docket. And this year it seems to have gotten lost to me, if you know what I'm saying, with all the
yes.
things we've got going on. And I think we had mentioned before that there's so many big college rivalry weekend games going, and it seems like they shouldn't even be playing them yet because the season hasn't been full. You know, usually these are the last games of the year,
Yeah.
and conferences are adding games. The Big 12 is still looking to add games on and finish the season 2-3 weeks later than they normally do. So it sort of doesn't register in my head. The fact that I think Stanford are they 0-4 or 0,
No,
have they won a game yet?
Stanford's 0-2, and Cal is 0-2. They're both 0-2.
Okay,
They've
well,
been victimized by a couple of cancellations already because of COVID-19. Not only 0-2, but they failed to cover in both
yeah.
losses, each team. So,
I know that Stanford got beat by Oregon first time out, and then they came out at home, and I was looking for them to possibly be a side. They got beat again, and so
Colorado.
my antenna went up with this Cardinal team because usually, you know, they play fundamentally sound football and they're always in the hunt, but they may not have the talent that they've had in the past. Ross, we've seen it slip the last year and a half, 2 years, and you know, it's a big game, of course, against Cal, but what do the Golden Bears have?
You know what? They've been very disappointing because in both matchups against UCLA and Oregon State, they were favorites. Both of those games were on the road, by the way, a road favorite at that. They got blown out at UCLA, 34-10. They lost a close one at Oregon State last week, 31-27. So it's their home opener.
You know,
November 27th. It's going to be their home opener. That's the age we're living.
imagine that. And that UCLA game, where they had 43 hours notice, and they played it on a Sunday morning because UCLA was supposed to be playing Utah that week, and the Utes came up with the virus, and they stuck that game in there. So, you know, trying to get a gauge and get a feel for it and a rhythm or a tempo is pretty tough right now. Even for a rivalry game like this, like you said, they're 0-2. Then they're playing their biggest game of the year, the third game of the year, the last week of November. It's you know, like I said, we still have time for the rest of the week until Friday and see what's going to happen here. I'm looking to do a little bit more research on this one for sure.
If for those of you who follow team trends, Stanford is 0-6 straight up in ATS on the road since the start of last year and losing by an average of 15.2 points per game. Like Chip just alluded to, you could see a little bit of decline in that Stanford football program gradually happening, and it's really come to fruition over the last 2 seasons. So, Chip, before we go, tell the people a little bit about what you got coming up on Thursday and Friday and over the weekend and how you've been doing lately and how they could get your picks.
Thank you very much, Ross. You know, you're aware we just launched my new website, chipwins.com, and I'll have a turkey shoot games ready for you on Wednesday. Well, actually, I'll be putting them up tonight for the NFL. All 3 games are going to be posted, and I have 3 big games on Friday, and we're going to roll it right on over, of course, on the weekend. Coming off a 4-0 Sunday, coming off a 5-2 college week, After 2 disappointing Saturdays in a row, we're back on track here, Ross, and I'm really looking confident the rest of the season. And the playoffs are starting and everything's getting together for us. It's our time of the year. We're going to be eating good on Thursday and having a great turkey shoot weekend.
Yes, we will. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have 3 picks up for sale on Thanksgiving Day in the NFL. I'm going to have 2 totals, one a top play total in the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game. And folks, if you've been following me in the NFL, you've been doing awfully well since the first Monday of the season, 35-24 in the NFL with my pay selections in the NFL, and that's good for 59%. And also my NFL totals this season, I lost last night, rare loss on an NFL total, 8-2 with my NFL total picks this season, Chipper. And if you go back to 2015, I'm 38-23 with my last 61 NFL totals. That's good for 62%. Again, folks, 2 winning totals, including a top play total in the Baltimore and Pittsburgh game, and also the winning side in the Washington and Dallas game at 4:30. So a big weekend ahead and a lot to look forward to, Chipper. And for Chip Chirimbus, I'm Ross Benjamin. Until the next time, good luck and God bless.